back to Study for an A-Star. Welcome to the first lesson. Before diving into the 5 common topics that students struggle with, I want to teach you how to actually learn. You see, most schools expect you to come to school every day, do your homework, study every day without actually teaching you how to absorb and retain the information that you are being given. I discovered this process, these tips, in my 30 years of teaching in the classroom. Most students go to school every day, they do their homework every day, they study every day, but when they are assessed, they don't do well, they feel flat. The solution to excel in chemistry are these 5. 1 is your mindset. A popular saying that I ask my students to write down very first day they are with me is this: my attitude and not my aptitude will determine my altitude. In other words, my attitude and not how brainy I am, how intelligent I am, but how my mind thinks. Positive mindset, can-do mindset is what will determine how successful I get in chemistry. It's not my ability. So, what do I mean by this mindset? Why is it that important? It's the very first one, number 1. Most students believe chemistry is difficult, it's just impossible. I heard a year 12 student telling her classmates when I was in year 7, oh, this chemistry is so difficult, I can never master it, it's impossible. And I remain grateful to that lady till today, because I immediately said to myself, year 7 little girl, this chemistry, I am going to do well in it. I must pass it, and then I will not do it anymore. It didn't turn out that way. I turned out to be a chemist. So, if the mindset is right, you do everything possible, I'm going to succeed in it, you are already 50% on your way up. Number 2, foundation of chemistry is essential. You must understand the foundation. For instance, chemistry is broken down into 3 aspects: inorganic, physical, and organic. Inorganic chemistry is the one you come across first because it is really the foundation. Periodic table is vitally important. You need to understand how the periodic table is put together. For instance, if you are shown an image of electronic configuration, 2 shells drawn, and in the inner shell there are 2 electrons, in the outer shell there are 7 electrons, and you are asked to name the element. You cannot magically memorize every element on the periodic table with their numbers of protons and electrons and neutrons. You have to understand the basis. So what do? You just get to your periodic table, you look through 2 shells means it's in period 2. You draw a line. 7 electrons on the outermost shell means it belongs to group 7. You draw a line down group 7. Where those 2 lines meet, that is the element you are looking for. It is a fluorine. So don't rely on memorizing. The content of chemistry cannot be memorized, it's just too much. You have to understand the foundation. The third one is what I call reasons. You have been asked a small question and you just give an answer. Let me give you an example. As you go down the periodic table, what happens to reactivity of group 1 metals? And you just answer, they get more reactive. You have just given a plain answer that will give you a grade C or a grade D. You haven't given reasons. The how, the why, the W's, that's what I call them. So, to get an A, you need to understand why alkali metals get more reactive as you go down. So, you draw the shells and you see lithium is in group 1, sodium is in group 1, potassium is in group 1, but they follow each other on the periodic table. So the number of shells increases as you go down the group. which means the outermost electron is further away from the positive nuclei as you go down the group. And therefore, the attraction between the outermost electron and the nucleus decreases. So it's easier for that outer electron to be lost. The next point is questions, questions, questions. You cannot go wrong by going over past exam questions over and over again. You must mark the exam questions yourself. When you go over exam questions and mark them yourself, there are two things that happen. One, you understand what the examiner is looking for. Two, you understand the depth that they are actually looking for. And when you read exam questions, you learn the language of the examiner. So be free to ask questions of any question paper that you are struggling with. Take it back to school and ask your teachers, ask your tutors. You cannot go wrong by mastering exam questions. Now, the final point is for you to teach it. I tell my students, chemistry is cooking. Open your mouth, go into the kitchen. No one hates food. So you go into the kitchen, you find anything in the kitchen, the cooking that is going on, that you can link with some chemistry that you have learned in the classroom. Teach your parents. My father-in-law in those days, a judge, had no idea of chemistry, but he was happily telling his friends, showing his friends my papers that I published when I was doing PhD. And one day he said to me, "Irada, do you know I now understand what octoquinodimethanes mean?" This was somebody who never studied science. He was a judge. He read law. But he understood by just looking at it over and over again and then telling his friends about it. It did stick. So open your mouth and teach everyone. You may say, "But I don't have anyone who lives with me." Teach your table, teach your bed, teach your desk, teach. So long as you are verbalizing it, it will stick. Remember, if you can't teach it, you haven't learned. Out of these 5 tips, number 1 remains the most important one. If you do not have the right attitude, the positive mindset, everything I have said today will be useless to you. Now that you have learned how to learn, we will begin with one of the fundamental topics in chemistry next lesson. Here is where your journey to mastering chemistry begins. See you next lesson.